Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shiur.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos Daf Hey. We're 8 lines from the top, says the Gemara. Ella Amar Abzera. Now, we know that in order for it to be considered a malacha of haitzah, the malacha of carrying out an item from one rishus to the other, it requires 3 elements. There are 3 parts to the malacha. Number 1, the akira, uprooting the item, lifting the chayfetz from one rishus. Then comes the haitzah, taking it out of its domain, moving it over to a different rishus. And finally, the hanacha, landing it, depositing it in the new rishus. Now the Gemara here is working with an assumption that in order for it to be legally considered akira and hanacha, it needs to take place with a makom chashuv, a place which has the area of 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, a makom dalet. Only an akira, which involves lifting an item from this makom of dalet, a makom chashuv, is considered to be akira. Same thing regarding hanacha. Only if the item is deposited, is landed in an area of a dalet, is considered to be a maaseh of hanacha. So the question is, our Mishnah seems to indicate otherwise, that there's no requirement of a makom dalet, not for the akira nor for the hanacha, because the Mishnah tells us that even when an item is in the hand, in the yadai of the balabayas or yadai of the ani, still the halacha of akira and the halacha of hanacha would apply. Even if he lifts the item out of the hand, or he deposits the item inside the hand, certainly the hand doesn't contain an area of dalet tfachim. Nevertheless, it's considered to be an akira or hanacha. So the Gemara is trying to figure out who is the man da'amar, who's the author of this opinion, who is the shita that is reflected in our Mishnah. The Gemara suggested a few ideas. First, the Gemara said it maybe it's Rebbe Kiva. Then the Gemara went on to Rebbe. The Gemara negated all these possibilities, and finally says the Gemara, who is the man da'amar, who's the author of our Mishnah? It doesn't require the akira to take place from a makom dalet or the hanacha to take place on a makom dalet. Ella Amar Abzera. Who is it? Hamani. Who is the man da'amar? Acherim. The shita of acher. The Gemara in Hurrius tells us that acherim is referring to Reb Meir. So he's the man da'amar our Mishnah that says akira from a hand is okay, hanacha on a hand is okay. The Sanya, as we learned, acherim oirim amad b'mkoyma v'kibel chayev. If the person receives an item when he's still standing in his place, then chayev, then the thrower is chayev. We're speaking about a person who throws an item. Ruvain tosses a chayfetz over to Shimon. So if it lands in Shimon's hands without Shimon having been required to move out of his place, he simply stands b'mkoymai and he receives the item right there. So in that case, Reuben is chayiv because the akira and the hanacha happened as a result of his masa, of his act. He threw the item and propelled it over to Shimon, thereby doing an akira and hanacha as well, since it landed in Shimon's hand without Shimon having required to move out of his position. So everything happened as a result of Reuven's action, out of Reuven's masa malach. So he's chayiv. However, if Shimon needed to uproot himself from his place, he needed to run over and intercept the item mid-air, in that case, patur. Reuven is patur because Shimon, by moving out of his position over to the item and intercepting in mid-air, who did the masa hanacha? Who did the hanacha here? It was Shimon. So Shimon contributed to the malach of Eitzah. Reuven did the akira, but Shimon did the hanacha. If not for the fact that Shimon moved over to the item, what would have happened to the chayfetz? It would have landed somewhere else on the floor, on the ground. And thereby the malacha then would have been completed solely and entirely by Reuven. However, when Shimon moved over and intercepted the item mid-air, he was the one who did the hanacha. Therefore, the malacha was concluded by 2 individuals. They both contributed to this ma'aseh malacha of Eitzah, and we apply the klal, the halacha of shnayim she'asu pturim. When 2 individuals contribute to the outcome of a malacha, then they are pater. This is the halacha we learned back on Daf Gimel and Aleph. So once again, if Shimon needs to move away from his position to catch the item, then he was the one who contributed the hanacha, and therefore it is shnayim she'asu. However, if he's standing b'mekayma v'kibel, if he's amad b'mekayma v'kibel, then it was entirely solely Reuven's ma'aseh. He did the akira and also brought about the hanacha as well. Says the Gemara, if so, how can you say that Reuven did a malacha v'aitzah? Where did it land? It landed in Shimon's hand. Shimon's hand is not a mokim dalad dalad. It's a very small area. We require that hanacha takes place al mokim dalad, and here, when it landed simply in his hand, that is too small an area. Ella apparently shmami. No, we learn from here lo ba'inan mokim arba. Apparently achirim hold there is no requirement of a mokim arba with regard to malachas haitzah. Says in 1 second. V'dilma, perhaps hanacha delay ba'inan. Okay, indeed, for hanacha, there's no requirement of a mokim chashav, a mokim dal. Even hanacha inside one's hand is sufficient. However, kira ba'inan. Perhaps you can make a distinction between hanacha, which is merely the secondary element of the malacha v'aitzah. It's merely the conclusion of the malacha v'aitzah. So we don't require a mokim chashav for that. However, the akira, which is the primary element, which is the most important factor of the malacha v'aitzah, this begins the transformation process, the change of location. It is the akira that is the catalyst for the malacha. It's the primary element. Perhaps the akira does require a makom of dalad dalad. You need to be oikert from a chashuv place. So the Gemara once again, v'dilma hanacha lo be'inan, ha'akira be'inan. How do you know that achirim would hold the same regarding akira? So again, bottom line, we don't have a Tana for our Mishnah. We didn't find the author of the Chiddush stated in our Mishnah that for both akira and hanacha there's no requirement of dalad dalad. Says the Gemara, that's one problem. V'hanacha nami, perhaps even regarding hanacha, you have no raya that achirim don't require makom dalad. How do you know that this case wasn't speaking about hanacha al makom dalad? V'hanacha nami, Dilma perhaps was speaking about the pashat kanfei v'kibla, that the receiver, the catcher, extended his cloak. He was pashat kanfei, extended his clothing, spread it out until it was wide enough. It was dalad dalad v'kibla, and then he received the item. The ikonami hanacha. In that case, certainly the hanacha also took place on a makom dalad dalad. So we can't apply shitas achirim to our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, okay, let's come up with another solution. Omar Abba masnisin, the Bachas Goris masnisin nami she'okra mitraskel v'niach al gabi traskel. Says Rab Abba, I have a novel approach to our Mishnah. When the Mishnah discusses placing an item in one's hand or being oiker, lifting an item from one's hand, it is speaking about that the person was holding a basket, which was a basket large enough to be dalad dalad, and the item was placed in the basket, which was being held by the individual. The item was lifted out of the basket, which was held by that person. So it wasn't directly placed or removed from the hand, rather there was a basket involved. And certainly in that case, the akira and the hanacha were in reference to a place of dalad dalad. Again, says the Gemara, Omar Abba Masisa Nami. He lifted it out of a basket, and the hanacha also took place in a basket, the ikonami hanacha. In that case, both the akira was from a dalad dalad, and the hanacha was also on dalad dalad. So therefore the kasha was never a kasha. The Mishnah also holds this halacha, that akira and hanacha need to have a makam dalad dalad. The Mishnah was speaking about a basket which contained an area of dalad dalad. Says Mar, how could you say that the Mishnah is discussing a basket? The Mishnah discusses hands, not baskets. Says okay, read that yodei means traskel shabiyodei, and that is the interpretation of the Mishnah. It's not directly being placed in the hand, but put in a basket which is held by the hand. Okay, says the Gemara, this will work well regarding one of the halachas. This interpretation works well regarding the halacha in the Mishnah, where the ani, for instance, placed the chayfetz in the hand of the balabais, who was a rishus hayachid. So you maintain that yodai over here doesn't mean directly placed in the balabais' hand, which was too small. We're speaking about the balabais is holding onto a basket in the rishus hayachid, and therefore, when the ani places an item into this basket, he has completed his malacha since he did the hanacha in the rishus hayachid. Okay, that works well. Ella, but how are you going to interpret the other halacha? Traskel shabir. How are you going to interpret the halacha which says that, for instance, if the balabais takes a chayfetz, puts it in the hand of the ani, which is in Rishus HaRabim, So instead of merely being a hand, we're speaking about the hand which holds a basket. And in that case, says the Mishnah, the Baal Bayis who places the chayfetz in this basket, which is being held on by the ani in Rishus Harabim, by doing so he completes his malacha of hoitzah, since he makes the hanacha in Rishus Harabim. And since it was in a basket, so we have the makam chashav dalad dalad, and he committed a malacha of hoitzah. Says the Gemara, but that's not so. A basket, which is the size of 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, even in Rishus Harabim, doesn't have the status of Rishus Harabim. Rishus Hayachid. It has a status of Rishus Hayachid, since it's wide enough to be considered Rishus Hayachid. Says Gemara, apparently, if you're going to interpret the Mishnah in this manner, that even when there's a basket which is Rachav Dal Dal Dalit, and it is being suspended, held on to in a Rishus Harabim, it seems that the Mishnah considers it to be a Rishus Harabim as well. Lema, perhaps. This will indicate the loik Rabbi Yehuda, that this Mishnah is not following according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who maintains that this basket is not a Rishus Harabim, it's actually a Rishus Hayachid, as we will see. The Sani, as we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda, no atzkana b'Rishus Harabim. If one positions a kana, a pole, a narrow pole, which is not a shear of 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, so he planted it in Rishus Harabim, uberoishe traskel, and on top of this pole is perched a basket, which contains an area of 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, which gives it the dimension of Rishus Hayachid. Says Rabbi Yehuda, in this case, zorak v'noch al gabav chayav. If one throws an item from down under Rishus Harabim, he throws it up into this basket, he is chayav. He did a malacha b'tzah. Why? Because he took the item from Rishus Harabim, he did the akira down in the Rishus Harabim below, and he brought about a hanacha. He landed the item in the basket, which has a din of Rishus Hayachid. So this is the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, apparently our Mishnah is not following this shita, the ikar of Rabbi Yehuda, because if this Mishnah of ours is following Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, how are you going to explain the halacha of the Mishnah which says, Pashad Baal Bayis says Yodeh Lechutz, the Baal Bayis extended his hand which contained a chayfetz Lechutz out to the Rishus Harabim, V'nasan L'tzorech Yodeh Shalani, and he placed the item in the hand of the ani, which, as we just explained, doesn't merely mean in his hand, but it means he put the item in the traskel Shabiyodeh, in the basket, which was being held by the ani. Says the Mishnah, the Baal Bayis performed the malacha of Eitzah, and he's chayiv. He did the akira inside the Rishus Hayachid, the hanacha outside in the basket in Rishus Harabim, and he's chayiv. Am I chayiv? According to Rabbi Yehuda, why is he chayiv? The basket has the same status as the house. He merely took an item from one Rishus Hayachid, from his home, and brought it out and deposited it in another Rishus Hayachid in the basket. Am I chayiv? Rishus Hayachid, Rishus Hayachid kamapik. He took the item from one Rishus Hayachid into another Rishus Hayachid. So apparently, according to this interpretation of the Mishnah, that when we speak about yada, we're not speaking about hands, strictly the hand. We're speaking about a hand which contained a basket, and the item was either placed in the basket or removed from the basket. Says the Gemara, this won't fit. This won't be consistent with Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that a basket, even in Rishus Harabim, has the halacha, has the status of a Rishus Hayachid. Says the Gemara, no, not a problem. Afilu Tema Rabbi Yehuda, even if the Mishnah, yes, is consistent with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, there's a big difference between the two cases. Hasam over there is Lamala Miyud. Rabbi Yehuda, who tells us in the Brisa that a basket which is perched on top of a pole, even in Rishus Harabim, the basket has a din of Rishus Hayachid. You know what we're speaking about? A basket which is lifted, which is suspended up in the air. It is 10 tefachim high, and indeed, that fits the criterion of a Rishus Hayachid. A Rishus Hayachid is an area which is 10 tefachim high, 4 tefachim wide. Therefore, certainly that is considered to be a Rishus Hayachid. As Rashi explains, although the pole is very narrow, is not rachav 4 tefachim, nevertheless, Rabbi Yehuda holds that we view the basket as if it extends downward until the floor, and it is one big area of a 10 tefachim high by 4 tefachim wide, and therefore the top surface of this imaginary area has a din of a full-fledged Rishus Hayachid, and if one tosses an item down from Rishus Harabim below up onto the basket, he has committed the malacha veitzah and he's chayiv. But that's only because the basket is suspended up in the air. It is gavoya yud and rachav dalet. However, by us, says the Gemara, hachan our Mishnah, l'mata miyud. It's speaking about that the basket was within 10 tefachim to the ground, within 10 tefachim to the Rishus HaRabim. And therefore, although it is rachav dalet, it is wide, 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, nevertheless, since it's not high 10 tefachim, it's not lifted 10 tefachim off the ground, certainly it cannot have the status of Rishus HaYachid. And rather, it is considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. And therefore, certainly our Mishnah is consistent with Rabbi Yehuda. Nevertheless, since our Mishnah is speaking about a basket which is in close proximity to the floor, it is within 10 tefachim. Therefore, even though it is 4 tefachim wide, it is still considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. And now we fully understand the halacha in the Mishnah. When the Baal Habayis takes an item from the home, he's oiker in Rishus HaYachid and extends his hand with the item into the Rishus HaRabim, places it in the traskel, in the basket, which is being held on by the ani. This basket is considered to be Rishus HaRabim, and therefore he's chayiv. So, according to this approach in the Gemara, how come the Mishnah considers the hanacha in one's hand as a maisa hanacha? Simple, because it's speaking about a basket. He deposited the item in a basket. And although it's a basket which is rachav dalet, nevertheless, since it's within 10 tefachim of the ground, is considered to be a Rishus HaRabim, according to all opinions. And certainly, hanacha does need a makam dalet dalet, and the basket has dalet dalet. Says the Mar Kasher le Ravavo. How can you say that the Mishnah is speaking about a basket? Miktani traskel shabiyadai. Does the Mishnah say traskel shabiyadai? V'yadai ktani. The Mishnah discusses placing an item into one's hand. The Mishnah should have elaborated, should have explained that we're speaking about a basket. So you can't interpret the Mishnah to be discussing a basket. Ella Amar Ravo, I'll come up with another solution to the Mishnah. How could it be that Akira Hanacha can be applicable in the Mishnah, which is merely discussing hands which don't have an area of dalet dalet? Kegain, it's speaking about, for example, shilshal yadei lamata milgimel v'kibla. Speaking about that the person lowered his hand within 3 tefachim, in very close proximity to the ground. We know that something that's within 3 tefachim is considered to be attached. We apply the klal, the halachah meshmesina, over lavut. When there's a gap, when there's a space which is less than 3 tefachim wide, we consider it to be closed up. We consider the hand, which is placed within 3 tefachim of the ground, to be an extension of the ground, and it's not a separate entity. And therefore, in this case, says Ravo, our Mishnah, which is discussing the yadai, which is within 3 tefachim of the ground, whether it's the hand of the ani in Rishus HaRabim, whether it's the hand of the Baal Habayis in Rishus HaYachid, since it's so close to the ground, it is as though it is part of the ground. And when an item is placed on this hand, it is as though the item was placed on the floor, on the ground, which is certainly 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. It certainly fits the criterion of dalet dalet. Therefore, it's not a kasha. How can the Mishnah consider it to be a hanacha? Because when you place it in the hand, which is so close to the ground, it's as though you place the item on the ground. When you removed an item from this hand, it's as though you removed the item, you lifted it from the ground. You did akira from the karka, which is dalet dalet. So that's the solution to the problem. Certainly we need dalet dalet. We have dalet dalet, since the hand is so close to the ground. Says the Gemara, how can you say it's speaking about that he lowered his hand so close to the ground? V'oimed ketani. The Mishnah uses the word oimed, that the Baal Habayis was standing up, the ani was standing upright. So apparently his hand was quite a distance from the ground. Says the Gemara, b'shoichet, speaking about that he's crouching, he's leaning over, and therefore his hand is indeed very close to the ground. V'boisema beguma. Or we can say that he's standing inside a pit, and even if he stands upright, his hand doesn't extend past 3 tefachim from the ground on top of the pit. So even if he's standing upright, since his body is positioned down in a pit, so his hand, which extends above the ground, can still be within 3 tefachim of the ground and has the din of dalet dalet. Bananas, perhaps we're speaking about a extremely short person, and therefore, even if he's standing upright on the floor, on the ground, his hand could still be within 3 tefachim of the ground. Okay, so these are 3 variations of the same teretz. The bottom line is we're speaking about that their hand is within 3 tefachim of the ground, and we apply the halacha of lavud, and we simply consider it to be an extension of the karka, and it has the status, has the significance, it has the chashivas of a makom chashav, makom dalad dalid, and certainly akira hanacha can take place with this area. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav, how can you say that the Mishnah is speaking about he's standing in a pit, he's leaning over, he's extremely short, if the Mishnah is merely coming to tell us the basic halacha of Eitzah, that the halacha of Eitzah involves akira from a makom dalad dalad, hanacha on a makom dalad dalad, why does the Mishnah need to trouble itself and describe all kinds of unusual cases? Why doesn't the Mishnah simply tell us, yes, if you make an akira from a makom dalad dalad, for instance, if the individual extended his beged, he spread out his beged and prepared an area of dalad dalad, and the person lifted the item from that area and went ahead and deposited it into an area which is dalad dalad. For instance, he put it into the beged of the other person, which was dalad dalad. That is considered to be a melacha b'eitzah. Why doesn't the Mishnah simply state a simple case like this, an ordinary conventional case? The Tana has to trouble himself to describe all kinds of unusual cases. Why doesn't the Mishnah simply state a simple, conventional, ordinary case of a akira and hanachah that took place with a makom dalad dalad? If the Mishnah is simply coming to tell us the pashat, the simple halacha, why does the Mishnah have to discuss all kinds of unusual scenarios? Says the Gemara, El Amar Rava. Rava has a different approach. That indeed the Mishnah is coming to tell us a novelty, a chiddush. The Mishnah is not coming to tell us an ordinary halacha that akira hanacha takes place from a makom dalad dalad. If that would be the case, the Mishnah wouldn't have to discuss hands, and we have to go ahead and describe the hand as being close to the ground due to the fact that he's crouching, that he's in a pit. The Mishnah is coming to tell us, yes, one's hand has a significance, has a din of dalad dalad. And that's why the Mishnah picks an example of a hand is coming to tell us a specific chiddush here. El Amar Rava, Yadai shel Adam chashuv aloi kedal dalad. One's hand, a person's yad, is chashuv to him, is significant to him, has a chashivas, has a status like dalad dalad. And therefore, even though the hand is very small, it does constitute a makom dalad dalad. Explains the Rambam why. Because one's hand has the ability to grasp even very large items. It has a grasping ability. Therefore, it is considered to be a makom chashuv. A person handles very large items with his hand. So it has a chashivas, like a large area. It has the ability to provide shimush and to serve a person, just as a makom of dalad dalad. Therefore, it is tantamount to a makom dalad dalad. And certainly the Mishnah is coming to tell us this chiddush. An ordinary hand, even if it's not within 3 tefachim to the ground, he's not crouching, he's not a nanos, he's not standing in a pit. None of these unusual cases. According to Rava, the Mishnah is coming to tell us a chiddush just by merely stating the scenarios of the Mishnah, presenting the halacha of the Mishnah in a manner of an item being taken or deposited in a hand. Because the Mishnah is coming to tell us a novelty, a chiddush. Yes, although ordinarily we require a makom dalad dalad, a yad of a person has a chashivas of dalad dalad. V'chein ki aser Rav and Rav Yochanan yodei shel adam chashuv eloi kedalad dalad. So in summary, we're trying to figure out what is the pshat in our Mishnah, which tells us that if one removes an item from a hand, or one puts an item inside a hand, the akira hanacha that took place with a hand, which doesn't seem to be a makom, which is dalad dalad, is considered to be an akira hanacha. How could that be? Who is the author of this sheet that doesn't require dalad dalad? Initially, the Gemara said perhaps it's Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara moved on to Rebbe, and then the Gemara found another Rebbe, which seems to hold this sheet. The Gemara negated everything, and finally the Gemara said perhaps it's Acherim. The Gemara negated that as well. You have no right that Acherim hold that akira and hanacha doesn't need to involve a makom dalad dalad. The Gemara went on to another suggestion that perhaps our Mishnah is speaking about there was a basket involved. The Gemara negated that. The Mishnah speaks about hands, not about baskets. The Gemara said, okay, it's speaking about a hand, but a hand which is within 3 tefachim to the karka. We apply the concept of a lavud. It's an extension of the karka, and it has the chashivas of dalad dalad, since It's as though the malacha took place with the karka, because the hand is so close to the karka. Finally, Rava said, no, none of the above. The Mishnah is discussing hands and strictly hands. The chiddush of the Mishnah is, yes, indeed, the hand of a person is chashuva loy kedal adal, has a significance, has a din. It's equated to a makam chashuv of an area of 4 tefachim. Therefore, even an akira from a hand or hanacha on one's hand has the halacha of a full-fledged masa akira hanacha and is considered to be a malacha of Eitzah. Continues the Gemara. Amar of Avin, Amar Belo, Amar of Yochanan. Zorak chayfetz, if one throws an item, so Reuven throws an object, v'noch b'tzoich yodeh shel chaveroi chayev. And the item landed into the person's hands, into Shimon's hands, and Reuven is chayev. Because he did the akira, and the hanocha as well. Says, my kamashma, what is he coming to teach us? Yodeh shel adam chashuv loi kedal adal. He's coming to teach us this same concept, that Shimon's hand has a chashivas of dal dal. Therefore, it is considered to be a hanocha when it lands in his hand. For Amra Rav Yochanan already taught us this halacha, as we mentioned earlier, that Ravin told us the name of Rav Yochanan, the general rule that Yodeh shel Adam chashuv loi kedal adal. So why was it necessary for him to teach us the same halacha in a different version? Says the Gemara, there's a chiddush here. Perhaps I can differentiate. Ma'odat, perhaps I would say, Hana Mili, this klal that a hand is considered like dal adal, that's only if he granted chashivas, he gave significance to the hand. Meaning that he had the intended purpose to have the item land in Shimon's hand. In that case, he granted chashivas. He was machshiv. He gave significance to Shimon's hand. He considered it to be a macham hanocha, and therefore had the din of dal dalet. But in a case where it was inadvertent, he threw the item and it just happened to land in Shimon's hand, so it wasn't intentional. He didn't grant chashivas. He didn't attribute significance to Shimon's hand in this case. But if he wasn't machshav the hand, perhaps in that case this concept would not apply. Kamash malon. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan needs to teach us the halacha in this case as well. Even if there was no kavana, there was no machshava to be machshav the hand, nevertheless, we apply the universal concept that a hand of a person gains the status of a mokim dalad, and a hanacha that takes place in this hand is considered to be a full-fledged hanacha. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan needs to teach us even in the case where one tosses an item and inadvertently it lands into Shimon's hand, there was no machshava, there was no significance that Reuven attributed to Shimon's hand. It was unintentional. Nevertheless, it is considered to be a hanach when it lands in his hand, because the hand has the status of a mokim of arba al-arba. Omar Abin, Omar V'lo, Omar V'yochanan. Omad v'mimkoyme v'kibel chayev. This is the halacha mentioned earlier. If Reuven tosses an item to Shimon, Shimon stands in his place. He didn't need to move out of his place, and he accepted, he received, he caught the item. Chayev, Reuven is chayev, the thrower is chayev, on account of the fact that he did a full-fledged malacha, he did akira, and he brought about the hanacha in Shimon's hand as well. However, if Shimon needed to move out of his location to intercept the item, then Shimon was the one who contributed the hanacha. And Reuven and Shimon are both pater, since the malacha was accomplished by two people. They both contributed to the outcome, to the result of the malacha. It's a shnaim she'asu, and they're both pater. Tani nami yachi. We have a brisa which says it's the similar halacha. If Shimon is standing in his place, the same place where he was standing when Reuven threw the item, chayev, then Reuven is chayev. If he needed to uproot from his place, v'kibel pater. But Rabbi Yochanan, what is going to be in the following case? Zarak chayfetz v'nekar hu mim koymai v'chazer v'kibel. Let's say Reuven tosses an item up into the air, and instead of allowing the item to land on the ground, he runs over and intercepts the item. Zarak chayfetz, so he throws a chayfetz, and he himself ran over and intercepted the item. He didn't let the item land on the ground. He intercepted it mid-air. What is going to be the halach in this case? So it's one person really accomplishing the entire malach. He did the akira by throwing it, and he also accomplished the hanacha by going and intercepting the item. Says the Gemara, what exactly is his question? Here we have a situation where there were two koiches, there were two powers here that were accomplished by one person. Why? Because the akira, the throwing of the item, would have resulted in the item landing in a specific location on the ground. Now, when he went over and intercepted the item, he altered the course of the item that was flying, and he now contributed a new hanacha, which was basically terminating the first act. He interrupted the malacha, the maisa of zrika, and he began a new masa hanacha. So we have two powers, two forces that were created by one person. What is the status of this malacha of maisa haitza? Do we say that although there are two different forces taking place here, there are two forces that are contributing to the outcome of this malacha haitza? We have the first force, which was the zrika, and we have the second force that interjected, that was added later. He interrupted the first zrika and he injected another koyach by altering the course and bringing about a new form of hanacha, which was not going to happen otherwise. So we have two forces being contributed by one single person. So do we say that since it's one person that contributed both, so at the end of the day the malacha was accomplished by one person? This is a full-fledged malacha of Eitzah, v'chayiv and ischayiv. Or Dilma, perhaps you can say, look at it differently. It says, though two people accomplished the malacha, and he is pater. Because what's the point of shnaim she'asu pater? When two people contributed to the outcome of the malacha, the result is affected, came about by two people contributing, one doing the akira, for instance, one doing the hanacha. So that is the halacha of shnaim she'asu, since the malacha was not accomplished by one person, but rather two people contributed to the outcome. It's a joint malacha, and they are both pater. Shnaim she'asu p'turim. Here too, perhaps, since there are two different forces playing here. There is the force of the akira, of the zrika. Then there is another separate force, which came about later. That is the force of the hanacha. So we have two different elements. We can't fuse them into one. It's as though two people are doing it. It's two separate mice and two separate acts. Because if not for the fact that he came later and intercepted the item would have landed somewhere else on the floor. So this hanacha that resulted on account of the interception was an entirely new phenomenon that was injected here. The first zrika was terminated, and therefore perhaps you consider it as two different mice and two different acts. It's as though two people contributed to one malacha veitzah, and it's like shnaim she'asu, and he is pater. Says the Gemara, teku. Indeed, we have no resolution to this question. There are various interpretations for the word teku. Some say teku is a spin-off of tekum. In Aramaic, teku means let it stand. So teku means let it stand unresolved. We have no clarity. We have no conclusion. There's another interpretation that tiku is a lashon of tik, like a case, like a box. So it's concealed. It's unresolved. We don't have clarity. The shaila, the question remains concealed in a case, tiku, and we have not yet come to any resolution. Finally, there's a pshat that tiku is a acronym or shetevus of tishbi yitaritz kushis v'abayis, that Mashiach Eliyahu Tishbi, not Mashiach, Eliyahu Navi, will come and resolve the kushis v'abayis, all the questions and the kashis and unresolved questions. So those are a couple of interpretations for the word teku. We have no resolution to this shaila. Continues the Gemara, Omar of Abin Omar of Yochanan. Hichnis yadai lo terchatzer chaveroi. If one extends his hand into his friend's courtyard, so he's standing in a Shusarabim, for instance, and he extends his hand, v'kibel megishamim, and he receives rain. It's the middle of a downpour, so he sticks his hand into his friend's property, and he receives some rain in his hand, v'oitzi, and then he goes ahead and brings it out into the Shusarabim, chayiv. That is a malacha veitzah, and he is liable, he's chayiv. because he did the akira inside and the hanacha outside. Maskal Zera, where is the akira? He didn't lift anything off the ground. For instance, if somebody else loads him up with an item, if a person loads up his friend with an item, that is not considered to be haitzah, because the friend didn't do any akira. He didn't lift the item himself. Maskal Zera. Mali hitinei chaveru. What is the difference if his friend loaded him up? If Ruvain loaded Shimon up with an item, Shimon didn't do an akira. If so, what is the difference between that case? Mali hitinei shamayim. What is the difference between if he was laden by his friend or by heaven? In both cases, he didn't do any akira. He merely intercepted the rain mid-air. He didn't lift anything off the ground. Iu lo yavad akira. Why is he chayv? He didn't do any akira. Says the Gemara, lo yitema kibel. Don't learn the halacha with the word kibel, meaning that he merely collected it from the air. Ela kolat. Interpret the halacha differently. Rav Yechon is telling us that if he extends his hand into the chutzner and instead of kibel, interpret it to mean kolat, he retrieved it. Rashi explains, it means that he swatted the rainwater with one hand and deflected it into his other hand, and by doing so he retrieved it, he collected, he gathered into his hand. At this point in the Gemara considers this to be a masa hanacha, because he did a klita, he deflected it, he did a maisa with one hand to bring it into the other hand, so it's considered as though he lifted it, and it's an akira. Interpreted the halacha as follows, not kibel, but rather kalat. So he did a maisa akira. Says, okay, he did an act of akira, but where is the makam dalad al dalad? He took it from the thin air. Where is the makam dalad? He didn't lift the item off a makam chashav. It's speaking about, yes, that he did the akira from a makam dalad. We're speaking about that he retrieved the rain, which was flowing down the kaisel, the wall. So by taking the rain off the wall, that is considered to be an akira from a makam dalit. Says Umar Gabi kaisel nami v'loinach. It never landed, it never rested. The rain was merely trickling down the wall. It never came to a standstill, it never rested. So therefore, there's no akira. Akira can only be when he lifts a rested item, an item which is munach, which is in a state of passivity, which is stationary. In this case, the rain was simply flowing down the wall. So why is this considered to be an akira? Says the Gemara, Kadama Rava, just as Rava had stated an interpretation regarding another halacha which was dealing with the wall, Rava said, it's speaking about, because of a slanty wall, a sloping wall. For instance, a wall which is wide on bottom and narrows as it goes up. Here also we're speaking about the rainwater was trickling down a kaisel mashupa, a sloping wall. And therefore, when the rain reaches the area which is sloping outwardly, so although it's perhaps still in transit, it's still rolling, but since it's on that protruding part of the wall, it's considered to be nach, considered to have the status of resting, and an akira from that location is considered to be an akira. So that is what the halacha is speaking about. That one who collects rain, which is trickling down a sloping wall, he has performed akira. And when he brings it out to Rishus Rabim, it is a malach of Eitzah. Says Rava, Heiche Itmar Ahad the Rava. Where exactly was the statement of Rava, who said that a kaisel is a kaisel mashupa? Where exactly was it stated? It says Ahad Asnan on this Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah the Snan Hayikoyer beSefer al Askupa. If one was reading a sefer, in those days the sefer was a scroll. She was reading from the scroll on the Iskupa, which was a threshold, a raised threshold. Rashi explains it had the din of a Carmelis. It wasn't a Rishus HaYachid, it wasn't Rishus HaRabim, it was merely a Rishus D'Rabbanan, a Carmelis. Since it wasn't high 10 tefachim, so it's a Rishus D'Rabbanan. What happened when he was reading the sefer? And the scroll rolled out from his hand. So he's still holding on to one side of the scroll, but the other side rolled out towards the Rishus HaRabim. Says the Mishnah, you can retrieve it, you can roll it back towards him. There's no problem in doing so. Why? Says Rashi, because since he is standing on a Carmelis and it rolled out towards the Rishus HaRabim, at worst case, even if there was a transfer of Rishuyos, if the item would be taken from one Rishus to the other, at worst case, it is a Malacha D'Rabbanan, Issa D'Rabbanan. It is not Issa D'Oraisa. Therefore, says Rashi, in this case, when he's actually holding on to part of the item, It is not considered as though the item has transferred locations. Because still Agudath b'yadeh, since he's holding on to the part of the item, one side of the scroll, it's considered as though the item is still by him, in his domain, in the Carmelis. There was never a transfer of locations. The item, the sefer, is never relocated. So, in this case, says Rashi, there's no concern at all, because the Rabbanan did not apply any gzera, any prohibition, in this case, because if they would have answered you, they would have prohibited you to go ahead and re-roll the item back to you, on account of perhaps a gzera, so that to safeguard from perhaps a person going in and actually transferring an item from Rosh Hashanah to Shayachit. Suppose the item would have totally fell out to Rosh Hashanah, then it would have been usher to transfer the item from one Rosh to the other. Says Rashi, in this case, there's no such gzera. Rabbanan did not prohibit him from going ahead and re-rolling the item back to him, because even at the worst case scenario, if the item would have rolled out completely, would have landed in Rosh Hashanah, and he would have went ahead and retrieved the item back to the Carmelis, at worst case it would have been only an Issa D'Rabbanan. So the Chachamim never did a gzera on Issa D'Rabbanan. The Rabbanan cannot go ahead and prohibit him to go re-roll the item when the item is actually partially in his hand and is considered to be in his present location in the Carmelis. The Rabbanan did not apply an Issa in this case on account of perhaps a different case where the item would have completely rolled out and then he would have actually transferred the item from the Shishram to the Carmelis, because that is only the Rabbanan, and we know the Rabbanan never do a gzera l'gzera. Rabbanan never apply an Isser, make a gzera to safeguard another Isser Rabbanan. Therefore the Rabbanan allowed him to retrieve the sefer, and they did not make an Isser in this case, since he's still holding on to it in his hand, and at worst it would have only involved the Isser Rabbanan if it would have completely fell out of his hand. So therefore the Chacham did not apply a gzera in this case on account of another Issa D'Rabbanan, because that's only a gzera. However, in the Sefer, in the next case of the Mishnah, which could have involved a potential Issa D'Oraisa, says the Mishnah, if he was reading the Sefer on top, on the roof, which is a Rosh Hashanah, in that case, if the item would have completely rolled out to Rosh Hashanah, certainly in that case, transferring the item from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah is Issa D'Oraisa. Therefore the Chacham said, even in the case where he's still holding on to the item, and it's considered as though the item is still by him, nevertheless, there's a gzera, there's an Issa D'Rabbanan not to retrieve the item, not to roll it back, because this is a gzera to safeguard one from coming to Issa D'Oraisa, because if it completely rolls out of his hand, and then he goes and retrieves the item from Shishram to Shayachid, he's doing Issa D'Oraisa. In that case, certainly it's in place to apply a gzera D'Rabbanan and not allow him to retrieve it. Says the Mishnah, if he's reading the Sefer on top of the roof, which is Shayachid, then his Galgal Sefer Miyodai and the Sefer rolled out to Shishram. In that case, we differentiate how far did the Sefer roll out. If the Sefer has not yet reached within 10 Tfachim of the Shishram, still above 10 Tfachim of the Shishram, that is not considered to be Rosh Hashanah. The domain of the Rosh Hashanah only extends up to 10 Tfachim. That area is a Makam P'tur, and therefore there's no problem retrieving it. He rolls it back towards him. But if the Sefer rolls out to the area of Yutfachim, it is within 10 Tfachim of Rosh Hashanah. That is the Rosh Hashanah. In that case, the Rabbanan said Gzera. They applied an Isser. They didn't allow him to retrieve it. Why? Because perhaps next time it might roll out completely and fall out of his hand and end up in the Rosh Hashanah, and he'll go and retrieve it. In that case, it's Isser D'Oraisa. So the Chacham applied a Gzera. They decreed that even in this case, when he's still holding on to it, they prohibited him from retrieving the item, which is partially dangling in Rosh Hashanah. However, in the Reisha, when it's merely a discussion of a Carmelis with Rosh Hashanah, since there's no possibility, there's no potential Issa D'Oraisa there, the Chacham did not apply Gzera when he's still holding on to it, because that's a double Gzera. This would be a Gzera in the case when he's holding on to it on account of perhaps next time that he lets go of it. But that case would also only be a Issa D'Rabbanan to actually transfer from Rosh Hashanah to a Carmelis. That's a Gzera l'Gzera. That's a double safeguard which the Chacham never do. Says the Mishnah, so if it once it reached Yud Tfachim, Mishegil Yud Tfachim, Hoif Chalaksav, then he can't retrieve it. There's a Gzera D'Rabbanan, and he needs to turn over the Sefer on its face, on its words. Rashi explains so that it shouldn't be an embarrassment by leaving it open and neglected. So he turns it over and leaves it as is. He doesn't roll back the Sefer. V'avinaba, says the Gemara, we ask the question, why does the Mishnah require him to leave it there in place, flip it over, but you can't retrieve it? It never landed. The side of the Chavetz, which is which rolled out to Rishus Harabim, is merely dangling mid-air. It never landed. So even a portion of the item is not in the Rishus Harabim. It's merely dangling mid-air. There was no hanacha there. So there's no isser. There should be no isser to roll it back to yourself. There's no element of haitzah here. It's all in the Rishus HaYachid. It's merely dangling mid-air. Since it hasn't landed, even a small portion of it has never landed in Rishus Harabim, so why is there any Issa D'Rabbanan? Apparently we're speaking about that he's standing next to a sloping wall, and therefore the scroll which rolled out actually landed on the sloping wall, and therefore since it's within 10 Tfachim Rishus Harabim, it was noch in Rishus Harabim. Tosfos explains that it's speaking about that the Rabbim are mekatfin alav, that the public makes use of this wall, they lean on it, so the sloping part of the wall within 10 Tfacha of Rishus Harabim has a legal status of Rishus Harabim, and therefore since that side of the Sefer is in Rishus Harabim, although he's still holding on to it, there's a Shus D'Rabban, there's a Issa D'Rabban, there's a Gzer D'Rabban not to go ahead and retrieve the Sefer, you must leave it as is. So that's the place where Rava issued his interpretation of the Mishnah, that the Kaisel is speaking about a Kaisel Meshupa, and the Gemara applied this interpretation to our case as well, the case of the Meig Shamim, where the person retrieved the rainwater, which was trickling down a sloping wall, and therefore the rainwater which is found on this sloping portion of the wall is considered to have been rest there, and therefore the Akira is considered to be an Akira since he's lifting an item that is in a standstill position. Says the Gemara, what is the comparison? How could you compare the two things? How can you compare a scroll which is resting on a wall to water which is trickling and moving along the wall? That is not in a stationary position. That is not hanacha. When does Rava say his concept is sefer david denayach? I'm speaking about a sefer which is avad denayach. It's in a resting position. Water which is trickling down the wall. Say it's a sloping wall, but it's on the move. It's in transit. It's not considered to be munach there. Rashi explains, water considered munach if it's in a contained area. In that case, it's stationary. But in this case, that it's moving along, it's in transit. How could you consider the water to be resting? And therefore, why, when somebody lifts that water, is it considered to be an akira? Ela Rava must be speaking about that the person extended his hand into the Chatzah Chaveri and collected some water me'al gabe guma, which was resting on top of a pit, and therefore it is in an enclosed and contained area, and is considered to be munach, and the akira from that area is a mas akira. Says Gemara, if that's the case, guma pshita, if it's on top of a pit and it's stationary, then of course it is considered to be munach. What is the chiddush of the Gemara? Why do you need to inform us such a halacha? It's pashit. If it's stationary, it's munach. And the akira from that place is the akira. Ma'od atem, perhaps I would think. No, mayim al gabe mayim lavanachu. When water is floating on top of water, it's not munach, since it's moving around. Kamashma, and therefore the Gemara needs to teach us a chiddush. Yes, it needs to inform us that even though it's moving around, it's not still. It's not absolutely in a resting position. It's the water is moving around. Perhaps I would think that the upper layer, the top layer of water, which is floating above the lower layers, is considered to be moving around and not munach. Kamash Malon, therefore the Gemara teaches yes, that is considered to be munach. Even the top layer of water is considered to be munach. Why? Because we view the whole body of water as one large mass. It's one entity, one single unit. And therefore even the top layer of water is considered to be resting on the floor on the bottom of the pit, and is considered to be munach. Says the Rav Azar Rav Tamei, Rav is following, is consistent with his opinion. The Amar Rav Mayim al Gabe Mayim Hayno Nachasam. Water on top of water is considered to be munach. Egos Gabe Mayim, but a nut which is floating on top of water, Lav Hayno Nachasai, is not considered to be munach there, because it's not one singular entity. It's not one mass, it's not one object. Therefore, since it's floating on the water, it's not considered to be munach, rather it's in transit, and if one were to lift the egos off the water, it does not have the status, the din, of a akira. Says the Gemara, Boy Rav, Egois B'Kli, the Kli Tzaf al Gabi Mayim. What is the halacha? If an egois, a nut, is contained in a Kli, and the Kli is actually floating on water, what do we look at? Do we look at the egois? Do we look at the Kli? If one lifts the egois out of the Kli, is that an akira? Since the egois is stationary, it's munach, it's safe and sound in the Kli. Or do we take the whole picture into consideration? To look at the egois in the broader context. Where is it sitting? In a Kli. What is the Kli doing? It's floating on water. So the egois also is considered to be floating and in transit and not munach. Again, Bayrab, egois B'Kli, Ukli Tzaf al Gabi Mayim. What is the halacha in that case? Ma'u. Basar egois azlina. Do we look at the nut? Do we focus on the egois v'hanayich and it's stationary? Therefore it is munach. Oidilma basar kli azlina and v'halei. Perhaps you take the broader context into consideration. Since the kli, which contains the egois, it itself is moving around, deny it. It's moving around, therefore it doesn't have the halacha of munach. And the egois as well can't be better than the kli which contains it. And it is also by default considered to be moving around and not munach. Teiku, we leave it unresolved. Says the Gemara, Shemen shetzaf al gabi yain. What about the next case, where oil is floating on top of wine? Is the oil considered to be munach or not? Says the Gemara, it depends. It's based on a different machlekes. Whether or not oil and wine connect, attached to each other, are considered to be one mass, one entity, or not. Says the Gemara, machlekes Rabbi Yechemnu Rabban. It's based on a machlekes between Rabbi Yechemnu and Rabban. This none, as we learned elsewhere regarding the halacha of Tumah V'Tara, Shemen shetzaf al gabi yain, oil which is floating on top of wine, v'noga tfil yoim b'shemen. And a tfil yoim, that's a person who was tamei and he was tayvel in the mikveh, but he has not yet experienced her shemesh, sundown, so he's not completely tar. He has a din of a sheni l'tumah, and he can go and invalidate pasal truma. If he comes into contact with truma, it becomes pasal. Now pasal means that it's a more lenient level of impurity of tumah. It cannot pass on the psul to another item. So if a tfil yom touches an item of truma, it becomes pasal. It becomes invalid. But if this item goes ahead and comes into contact with another item of truma, it doesn't pass on the psul. Says the Mishnah, so if a tfil yom touches the shemen, which is floating on top of wine, he only invalidates the shemen, but doesn't carry over to the yain, because the shemen and the yain underneath it are considered to be two entities. This is the Shita of Tanakama. They're both considered to be fully connected, integrated. They're both one entity, and therefore, when the tfil yom touches the shemen, which is floating on the wine, everything becomes pasal as one. Similarly, says the Gemara, in our case, where there is oil floating on top of wine, is the wine considered to be munach on the bottom surface? That depends whether or not we consider the oil to be one entity with the wine. According to Rabbi Yechemnu, yes, it's one mass, it's one entity, it's one unit. Therefore, not only is the wine considered to be munach in the kli, but the shemen as well is considered to be munach in the kli. According to Rabbanan, they're two separate entities. The wine is munach, but the shemen on top of it is merely floating on a different object. It is not considered to be munach. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Aben Amar Beloi, Amar Yechon. Hayoton oichla mashkin v'nichas v'yotze kol yom kuloi. If one was laden with food and drink, why was he laden with food and drink? He picked it up to transfer it from one corner of his house to the other. He had no intention of carrying it outside. Hayoton oichla mashkin. He was laden with food and drink, v'nichas v'yotze kol yom kuloi, even if he's going in and out a whole day, from Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, back and forth. He's not liable, he's not chayiv, it is not a ma'aseh. Why? Explains Rashi, because for the malachas of Shabbos we require a condition called meleches machshavos. It needs to be that the person had the kavanah, the intention to perform, to accomplish the malacha. We learn it from the Mishkan that the term melechas machshavos is mentioned there. It needs to be a significant malacha, it needs to be a malacha which was done intentionally, with explicit kavanah. In the case where a person lifts an item without the intention of carrying it outside, he had no intention to do the malacha. He's merely picking it up to transfer it to the other side of the room. In that case, the akira does not have the status of the akira of a malacha beitzah, and therefore, even if he goes ahead and proceeds to walk in and out of Shisarabim, he is not chayiv because it was never an akira, a proper akira performed. Says the Gemara again, until he stops, until he comes to a standstill. He stops. At that point, he terminates the initial Maseh Akira. The first Maseh Akira was done with the wrong intention. Comes to a stop, comes to a halt. At this point, he can begin a new Akira. And at this point, if he is Akira himself with the intention of carrying it outside, this is the proper Akira required for the Melacha Beitzah. Amar Abaye, when you speak about standing still, it's only V'hush Amad Lafish, if he stands to rest. If he makes a significant stop, he makes a rest stop, he stops to rest. That terminates the initial Maseh Akira and begins a new Maseh Akira. But if he's merely standing to adjust his load, so it's a temporary standstill that is necessary to aid and abet in the carrying. It says Rabbi Chananel is considered as if he's still walking. He never came to a standstill. He never interrupted the initial Maseh Akira. He's merely adjusting the load so he can continue walking. In that case, it's still the first Maseh Akira which is continuing. It's one continuous Maseh Akira, and since that doesn't have the status of a proper Maseh Akira, he's still patur. It says, how do I know this chiddush that the Amida needs to be lafish to rest? Because we learn Teichtal Amas. If a person is carrying a chayfetz, in Rosh Hashanah we know if one carries a chayfetz 4 Amas, that is the Malach of Havar Rosh Hashanah, it is a form of Eitzah. So if one interrupts the 4 Amas, he stands still. Teichtal Amas, Amad Lafish Pater, if he stands to rest, this Amida interrupts, terminates the Masa of Havara, and he begins a new Masa Tzor afterwards, and it wasn't one continuous 4 Amas, therefore he's Pater. However, Lakatif, if he's merely taking a short break to adjust his load, and he continues walking, and he completes the 4 Amas Chayiv, in that case, it is considered to be one continuous Masa Havara, Masa Tzor, and he's Chayiv. Chutz L'Da'at Amas, if he's carrying the item in Rosh Hashanah, he's already past 4 Amas. Amad Lafish, if he then stands still in order to rest, that terminates the Masa Havara, and indeed, it completes the Malach and he's Chayiv. However, if he merely stands lekativ, he's taking a short break to adjust his load, that is not considered to be a hanacha, and he's pater. So we see here that we differentiate between standing still to rest, which is considered to be a masa hanacha. It terminates the original masa akira. It's considered as though he's coming to a hanacha. He's standing still, he's resting, and the object has now come to a full rest. So we're differentiating between that type of Amida and the Amida which is merely to adjust his load. That is not considered to be a Hanacha, and it doesn't interrupt, it doesn't terminate the initial Maseh Akira. So, same thing regarding our case. A person lifts an item without the intention of carrying it outside. This Akira doesn't have the status of the Akira for a Maseh Itzah. Therefore, it depends why he stopped. If he stopped lafush to rest, by doing so, it is like as though he landed back down, he put the item back down, he terminated that first Maseh Akira which was invalid, and now when he begins again, when he uproots himself again, now he's beginning a legal Maseh Akira required for the Maseches Shabbos, but he's merely standing to adjust his load. He never terminated the original Maseh Akira, it's one continuous Maseh Akira, and he cannot be chayiv as a result. It says in Ma'ika Mashmalan, so what is Rav Abin in the name of Rav Lo teaching us in the name of Yechna? Shlo Yehoisa Akira Mishar Rishon Lakach? He's pater because the initial Akira was not for the intention of Malach Beitzah. Ha'amr Rav Yechon Chad Zimna, Rav Yechon already taught us this halacha elsewhere. Dam Rav Safra, Rav Amir, Rav Yechon, Hamar Chafetz Mizavis L'Zavis. One moves items around from one corner of the house to the other, v'nimlach alein v'atzian, and changes his mind, he decides to take it outside, pater. He's pater. Shelo Yehoisa Akira Mishal Rishon Lekach, because his initial Akira, the intention during the initial Akira was not for the purpose of Eitzah. So we see this concept already stated elsewhere. Why do we need a repetition of the same concept? Says the Gemara, there are two versions, two Amayroim, who stated the halacha in the name of Yochanan. Mar Amar L'Bahaylishna, one Amar said it in this version. In this scenario, Mar Amar L'Bahaylishna, the other Amar said it in a different version. Indeed, Rav Yochanan only taught the halacha once. However, there was a difference of opinions, a different way of presenting the halacha. One Amar presented in this type of case, one Amar in the other type of case. However, the underlying principle is the same. The Akira needs to be done with the intention of a Malacha Beitzah. Otherwise, if he's merely lifting it to move it around within the Rosh Hashanah, it doesn't have the status of Akira, and he is not liable as a result of that Akira. So in conclusion, Hanacha requires certain conditions. It needs to be on a place which is makam dal dal dalet. The Gemara told us that a hand of a person has a chashivas of dal dal dalet. We discussed water which is floating on top of water, yes, is considered to have come to a full rest. A nut on top of water is not. A nut within a kli which is floating on water, we have a teiku on that. Wine which contains oil floating above it is a machlekes. And finally we learned that only if one stands still, he is amad lofish to rest. That is considered to be a hanacha. But if he's merely adjusting his load, that is not a complete standstill. That is considered as though he's still walking, because the adjustment of the load is helping him continue walk. It's a continuous maseh akira, and therefore it does not have the halacha of hanacha.